Inflation is rising again. Not a collapse, not a crisis yet, but the kind of increase that makes central bankers sit a little straighter in their seats. In today's show, we'll be looking at SPX charts, Bitcoin charts, doing technical analysis, making price predictions, as we always do. Welcome to the show. 3% year over year was the figure that came in January. It was higher than expected, higher than the market's priced in, and that's enough to send Treasury yields climbing, stocks dipping, and the Federal Reserve reconsidering every move they were planning for 2025. The headline looks a little bit like this. If you're looking at BBC News over here in the UK, you can see the big decline that we had in inflation until recently, and then there's this uptick in January, which is being blamed on the price of eggs having gone up 54% this year, or in the last year. However, I have a different question to ask about that. Is it just the same old playbook? A little inflation creeping up, a little rate cut, uncertainty, and suddenly investors realize that they don't actually know what's going to happen next. Then we zoom out and we ask the question, is this actually just about inflation, or are we living through a global unraveling, the end of an era that was already breaking apart before most people even noticed? A century ago, before the First World War, the world felt shockingly modern. The telephone, the automobile, international finance. There was a belief that globalization had already happened and that the world was past the stage where major wars could reshape it. This was before the First World War, right? And this is genuinely what people thought in the world then. The communication between across the Atlantic, using the cables that Marconi had laid in the Atlantic Ocean, for example, it was enough to change the world's perception of itself into a place that had already arrived at a destination at a time when they were really quite peaceful and economies in Europe and America had become quite integrated. Then Sarajevo happened, then trenches, and then a brutal reality check that did lead to the crash of the stock market as well after. Today, well, markets think they've priced in everything, right? Wars, we've got Ukraine, we've got Russia, we've got Israel, we've got Gaza. Interest rates, which of course went up, having been at low, near zero, basically, for the longest time. Political chaos, like the French who voted in the extreme right-wing party for the Europe, which forced Macron in to call early elections, and then they flip-flopped right back again and put in the relatively moderate Macron in power. So history suggests that people haven't actually learned yet. And look at what's happening now. The Ukraine war isn't ending. Okay, promises are not going to be kept about ending that anytime soon. It's dragging Europe deeper and deeper into uncertainty. Gaza is on fire. And the most popular, the most powerful economy in the world, well, it's it's a little bit chaotic right now. And I think we all can see it and feel it. And while we might be somewhat entertained and appreciating the way that the narrative in the news shifts on a daily basis, last week on the show, I predicted that there would be really big news to change the narrative and that it might involve crypto within the space of the next week. Well, we actually had 3 really, really big news story changing events since last week, and one of them did actually touch on crypto, which is good. However, now today we're getting this inflation data, and markets did take a hit because of it. So with Trump back in the White House reshaping the government and tearing out layers of bureaucracy, which could be a good thing, right? In the medium, longer term, short term, maybe, I don't know, big government, small government, that's a debate to have. But pulling away at large bureaucracy, you can run the risk of pulling out something, pulling out some of the plants with the weeds, if you like. And stacking the Fed then with his own picks is going to be an interesting place to put the world in. We can say what we like about Jerome Powell, and there's been lots of jokes about that when interest rates went up and people were upset and they didn't come down fast enough. Even Europe and Canada and so on, beating America to the drop in the interest rates instead of America leading the world there on that front. People kind of can make jokes about Jerome Powell, but we've analysed this in the past on the show, and actually it turns out Jerome Powell is one of the only people in any position of power in America who actually has a good handle on what's really going on and how to approach things. He's done a superb job. Wow, amazing, right? It's a bit of a bombshell, that. And another bombshell is that so much money that America has to inflate its own currency by every year actually goes exclusively towards paying off the debt from prior years where it's inflated its own currency to spend money. And we're at a point now where over half of it is going towards paying off the debt. Essentially, it's within itself. It's a sticky situation. Jerome Powell already called it back under Biden. He called it an unsustainable situation when he did a conference with the leader of the European Central Bank in Holland. But that's not, it really isn't actually even necessarily a question of Donald Trump, because Trump has got this amazing ability to get the best out of it's getting the best out of a random kind of group of people. You can get some of the best from this guy, some of the best from that guy. That's cutting out. Why is it cutting out? Why is the stream cutting out? I don't have a VPN on or anything. It seems like my internet's okay. I don't know why that's happening, folks. I just hope that it works. I just hope that it works for people. So, Donald Trump actually is able to kind of get the best out of some people. So you've got the likes of Kennedy Jr., right, who's got some policies which really go against the grain of what Trump wants, but he's able to put him in a position and say, do what you do best at that role. And he's done that with a lot of different people. And the one that the big question mark exists over is whether or not Elon Musk is actually the right man to be doing any of the jobs. He's not American for a start, and he has got some strange opinions about things. And one of the things that he's calling for is Jerome Powell's head. Just a second, folks. So he gets the best out of people, but Elon Musk has got a question mark about whether or not he's the one for it, and he wants to take Jerome Powell's head and replace it with Ron Paul being a guy who's against the military industrialization complex in the USA. So that kind of goes against the grain of what Trump's saying, where he wants everybody to increase military spending. So you can see how there's unusual dynamics at play there. But for it to be somebody who's ostensibly just anti-Fed is enough of a qualification is a poor substitute. Folks, if you are getting buffering issues, just rewind slightly, and it should be working fine. See people in chat saying that that's working for them. So the Fed has become trapped, and Powell knows it. The bond market knows it. Inflation isn't low enough to justify deep rate cuts, but markets already baked them in, meaning that every delay risks a correction, right? That's the issue right now, where markets are sensitive to interest rates and inflation data because we have been primed to be for the last couple of years. And delays, of course, create further uncertainty, and then that undermines the depth that's within the market in terms of demand to buy any dips, and it could create even bigger problems if there is deeper drops, which would result in a correction or even potentially worse. Within the futures market, we're seeing that pricing in multiple cuts this year was the case before, and now there's maybe going to be one, and if inflation holds steady or rises further, there'll be none. When it comes to Ron Paul, who was the man that spent decades warning about the military-industrial complex, and now we're watching as defense stocks rally, military budgets swell, and interest rates become another weapon in economic wars, it wonders, to me, it kind of speaks to whether or not this person knows what he's doing, and therefore any recommendation for him is also speaks poorly of the one doing the recommendation, when Jerome Powell has actually been speaking a lot of sense. The market isn't ready for this. Investors are buying the safety trades they always do with the bonds and the golds and the dollar and all that stuff, but that assumes this is a normal cycle, and that we assume that the system holds, right? And that's a big assumption to be making when we've got a game-changing setup in a ministry in the country who are openly talking about how they want to change the game. So what if it doesn't, right? What if the normal cycle doesn't hold? And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Rocky Outcrop, and let's dive on into the charts. Thanks for joining me. Any buffering issues, give it a wee rewind. It should be working fine for you. Let's see how the charts are doing. Whoops, there's the speed test thing that I was trying to do because the internet wasn't working. What I meant to click was this button. Okay, enough of them intros. Overall, it's actually been a kind of like green day, if you want to be really kind of optimistic about how you talk about things on the SPX. But of course, markets opened lower, pushed up. We've had a day which is a green candle by virtue of the fact that the price is currently higher than it was at open. But it's essentially actually a negative day for some markets, and that's the dip that we're talking about. But it is visually confusing to the nascent trader, right? This has been an overall downward day, and we're back down towards $6,000, and that's kind of operating as a bit of support for us, and that's very good. But we're still not in the area where markets are confident, and I think that it's fair to say that markets will not look like they're confident until the prices are above 6,130, and markets won't have prices above 6,130 until they look confident. And that's not really a paradox, that's just the constant way that the world works, because the world really is the summation of all probabilities, as opposed to any fixed individual reality at any given time. And in fact, even observing and commenting on these things has its own impact on reality. So reality is actually the sum of all probabilities, and without having actually got above 6,130, it won't look positive, and it won't go above there until it looks positive. So, and people are confident. That's the kind of situation that we're in with that. And now, for a more interesting picture with regards to price chart right now, there's Bitcoin. We spoke about this obviously over the last few weeks, and you can see the vestigial technical analysis remains on the screen, because what was planned obsolescence when it came to RTA has actually remained relevant the entire time. So what was once vestigial becomes actually current, and we can see that the resistance of that a trend line, which has then become support, continues to act as support, even including today with a drop down that took prices to just below $94,000. The trend line continues to be towards the downside, and there is a malaise in the markets when things have not really given us any confidence. Cryptocurrency seen as, because it is and operates along the lines of the tail that wags the dog, or whatever, when it comes to risk and risk on and risk off, cryptocurrency is not a safe haven. It's actually an amplified arena for the attitude towards risk in the markets. So while the bottom hasn't fallen out of the market and things have not crashed as yet, there has been multiple kind of corrections happening during a phase when we were actually anticipating moving into all-time highs due to the fundamental change of an ostensibly positive pro-crypto president, pro-markets president. But with the economic changes that have come in since in the last couple of weeks, it's actually added to inflation pressures, and the economic certainty in the world has dropped dramatically, with central banks around the world revising growth estimates for the upcoming year down the way in unison. There's a sort of chorus of, oh my goodness, things don't look as good as they did before, which was certainly not the mandate that we elected Donald Trump on. So there's a delay, a kind of a lag happening here in the markets between kind of where the good stuff is coming from, which we don't know yet, and what we expected. I gotta say that I love my audience, and I really do appreciate everybody in there. Seeing a bit of the chat there, and just thinking, hey, isn't it great to have vibrant audience? And if you're watching this later as recorded, for instance, or watching along just now, it'd be great to have your like on this video, hit the heart, and after the video's over, drop a comment in there saying what you think about the economy, and to let me know that you were watching this particular section of the video. To if you want to be part of that unique crowd, then be sure to put in the phrase Rocky rocks the Rocky Rocks. Yeah, just put in Rocky Rocks and I'll know that you're watching this particular moment in the video, and that'll be kind of a cool little fun thing, along with whatever you want to say, of course, as well. Helps the algorithm too, so that's all good. So this is the current picture with Bitcoin. That's very good. And we wanted to take a look and see then, and catch up, of course, with what we spoke about last week. The situation last week was saying that there was going to be kind of more of the same, and funnily enough, there's been quite a bit of volatility over the last week while the situation has remained the same. So while you can see that there's been fairly large swings in the price here, that the overall format of the events has remained remarkably similar throughout this period of time. And we're seeing the volatility being expressed with a lot of dojis and a lot of candles with long upper and lower shadows on them. Thanks to everybody as well for your super good comments. I've seen more confirmation when you go back 30 seconds, everything's fine on the stream. So just do that and it'll work. Thanks so much for your part of cooperation and understanding. So the volatility being a thing is kind of quite interesting when we look at some of the altcoins. Here's the DOT chart, for example, and currently trading at a price of $5.17. But I'll just bring up like the 15-minute chart here. So you can see that recently it was at $5.20. That was, of course, yesterday. And then during yesterday evening, it dropped down to $4.76. You know, got your 20% drop in price. And then it went as high as $5. Inflation data came out back down at $4.74. And then the reaction post inflation data went up as high as to $5.22. So like, you know, you can see an expression of this volatility that's happening right now in crypto markets. And I think that there's a picture that people kind of need to be aware of slightly. And this is across the board on basically all the charts. So I just wanted to show you another one to give you a clear example. But this is everywhere. There was a huge downward wick that got bought up on the same session, trading session here. This is the daily chart looking at others, which is an index for a lot of the top cryptos out there, excluding Ethereum and Bitcoin and the stable coins. And we can see that there was a huge drop down and bounce back up. So from the kind of the open on that candle was 279 billion. The close was 292 with highs up there at 298. So we can say 300 billion was the highs of the candle, and the low of the candle was 218 billion dollars. So huge swings there with what clearly could be kind of considered to be like a liquidation event. And what we have to hope is that the open interest in the markets is moving to more diamondy hands who have a plan for getting a return on this, the likes of Michael Saylor and banks and institutions and big rich folks and Elon Musk and all that. You know, what we want to see is that going up. Now you think like the way that Elon Musk has been about operated in markets in the past, multiple run-ins with the SEC for is the way he talks about things, and questions about whether or not he was doing anything that was, you know, against the rules and stuff. And now he's in charge of a department called Doge. He loves Doge, the altcoin, you know, the S coin in the crypto world, the original kind of meme token. It's very famous. All this stuff very famous. So it's like, you know, do you think he owns any of it or not? And this is maybe not so much conspiratorial or anything like that. It's genuinely kind of curious. You know, do we think that these people own it in the same way that if you invest in a share, a stock, then you kind of want to know whether or not the CEO owns the shares of the company, right? Because if the CEO owned 1 million shares, then last week sold 1 million shares, and then he had then none, you'd be thinking, why does he not want to own any of this? Does he not think the price will go up of these shares? And then, of course, what we so often see is the price drops. Indeed, the reverse is true. You know, the CEO knows that there's some really good stuff happening in the business. It's not been priced in yet, buys the shares, and then the stock goes up. So you kind of wonder if the likes of the guy that runs Doge in the government, that was called Doge, like an advertisement to Doge, and you know, does he own any, and how much does he own right now, and is he buying more? So I'm interested in these things, and I would like to know, but there's no way for me to figure that out myself. But maybe somebody in the crypto world knows what sorts of wallets they used in the past, and if those have gone up and down, and they could find out the details, because this bearish price action and this wick here, you know, are we seeing that big safer hands have bought into this, and that's why prices move back up, and this is just a test? And then subsequently with the price action here, was this move down here just a test of these former lows and of course the prior resistance? So was that what has resulted in this happening, and we can then see prices move back up? And at the same time, you know, who was buying when the people were getting liquidated? Those are the questions that I have about the kind of the structure of the background of the market right now. In terms of technical analysis, though, the clear case that this line is important. It was once support, became resistance, became support, and of course support again here. It's very, 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 very clear that that's very important for the overall market, and while it's above it, you know, I'm going to be bullish. Okay, so I'm going to ask about retraces versus the lows for moves up in the here and now. This is from kind of the departure point down towards the low. This is the retrace that's happened subsequently. We've seen prices manage to sustain above the 236, our support line, very good. And then we're looking back up and saying, can it move up towards where the 886 would be, or so, do a big move up, which would be, of course, a huge rise in various different cryptocurrencies, or not. I'm going to be bullish on this in terms of a correction towards the upside with the continuation of the upward trend. However, this is at that point when it feels like the unraveling I was getting at the start of the video, where you elect people who, based on a crypto mandate, who then takes somebody who was unelected and gives them a position in real power in the government, who has a really strong track record of being extremely bullish on cryptocurrency, and then you expect to see the cryptocurrency markets rise. And if they don't, then how does that, with that background, affect the market? And it's quite it's not particularly pretty story. Thanks to people who are contributing towards the goal here. I'll give everybody their blessings. We've not got that long to complete the goal, so I wonder if we'll get anywhere near the target. But I want to say a big shout out to XD who did that earlier, and Fortnite and Chills. It's good to see people in the audience joining us today. Luke Spears, David, Girtham, El Jefe, Sauced, Tradespotting, Aviator, and more. And I appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, a reminder to hit like, please. Thanks so much for the donation as well, Chris. That's cool of you, buddy. Thanks so much, man. Okay. So that's the others chart. How do I feel about it? Well, I feel, you know, some sense of trepidation, but overall, the huge downward wick, kind of the huge retracements, the huge pullbacks and so on, could be argued to be following along a trend line like this. Of course, with the liquidation event having been this outside event, that's why I'm drawing specific reference to this candle here, this wick. So you can see like this violates the trend line, but the discussion as to whether or not we actually stay above this support and resistance zone. We called this a kind of liquidation event, which was somewhat outside of the norm of the markets, and that perhaps here we see that there was bought into, but we don't know yet, right? It could have just been that it was that was just historical orders on there and nobody's interested. People got liquidated. Unless they buy back in again, then the markets have got less upside impetus. So we want to see how that open interest actually switched around and who holds it at this point. You could also do other things with trend lines and so on. But that point is the point that I'm making, and I just wanted to visualize it there at the end with regards to this wick and how markets have been recently. So that's my position on that one. It's at the 50% retrace point, by the way, from this low in August of 2024 to the high that we had recently. So this is kind of, you know, your make it or break it type of zone. The retrace, where did it go down to? The very edge of the golden pocket. So, you know, there's a degree still of logic and rationality in that market. So we want to see that story turn positive, and I still believe that we'll get a kind of follow through on the mandate that he was elected on from Donald Trump at some point with regards to being positive about crypto, and the likes of Elon Musk to be, you know, positive about these things and stuff, instead of it just being kind of a weird Doge, the department Doge government efficiency, like it's like, you know, right, you know, it's just a joke. Like, the joke's on us. Then it's the joke on us. That's what it becomes. It's the joke on us. Like, I thought you liked Doge. I didn't think that you were just taking the piss out of everybody, you know. So that's the current situation. Waiting to see that resolve. I'm expecting a positive outcome. This is a story you spoke about last week with regards to live person, but I know that people like to have updates on this one, so just dropping this in there. I think we've got a few people who want to see. The story remains the same currently, and I'm still quite positive on it. This is entered into that kind of buy-in territory zone here with lows on today's trading at 125. Some people might have picked that up on a bit of a discount, looking to eventually get a break outside of this range. I'm not really interested in the trading within this range. Talking about that, I've explained that in past shows and so on. Over the recent past. I wanted to point out to people that on Thursday, the 20th of February, we will be getting some earnings coming in from Live Person, and I'd like to see a nice positive discussion about them from the board when they're conducting their call, and I would like to also see some surprising elements to it in a way, like not surprising, but just estimate beating. You know, I want to see the revenue being a bit better than the estimate and the earnings a bit better than the estimate, but also I want to see it delivered in a way which explains why, and that it's and what to expect more of, because the market heavily priced in the previous earnings call, which featured a lot of expectation management from the board with regards to how their earnings would progress, and I'm hoping that was priced in, and that subsequent recovery has been positive, and that this consolidation here is the fueling up of the spaceship and a representation of the hesitancy in the wider market, because some people have, of course, got uncertainty and a lack of confidence following the chaos which has ensued in a time of change, and what we're waiting for is to see if it's a change for the good, and that's all, just change for the good. That's what we want, and we're positive and open to that happening. So hopefully we get some change for the good, but we're in a period of uncertainty, which is a natural component of change, because we don't know if it's going to be change for the good yet fully, and the markets are not betting on it being change for the good yet, but they're also not dumping yet, so not fully. So that's the situation, you know. And that's affecting, that's the context that's affecting this stock. It's affecting other stocks too. One of the interesting ones that I like to talk about in the show is PayPal. Seeing it having retrace back down to the edge of this gap here is not really shocked me today. The price action recently has been quite adverse on this stock. Really, if we look back, like a lot of the rest of the market, the highs came in recently. You know, the last sign of area was around about the 20th of January, and then it's dumped since, and it's a little bit kind of frustration for PayPal investors who are looking to see it challenge the $100 round number area to really kind of put the price into this sort of, you know, this zone up here where you can be happy, you know, up there. All of this from those highs to the $100, right? So this is a very different stock picture. That's a bit happier looking than down here, right? Which is obviously the sad one. Right? and that's at $100. So I think that was, and it's, you know, nice round psychological number and everything else, and that happened around about that time. So we're waiting to see these things resolve. And what has happened in the markets is that they've sought out liquidity, they've sought out support, and they've sought out an area where people can all look at clearly and be confident about where a bounce would come in at. That's what they've been looking for. So in a time of uncertainty, when the background context is uncertain, and this is an interesting point to listen to if that sort of thing interests you, then you're going to see this type of thing happen. But also as well, it's going to seek out areas where there is actual certainty in the stock. Okay, so the idea of it coming down to test this gap in here, which was of course the breakaway gap that led for a move from the 75 to the pretty much $100 run, which is very, very good, has then been tested with the price action today. So it sort of speaks for itself to say that movements below this zone are quite negative and so on. But of course, this is the area where you'd hope to see a bounce at. So what we want to see then is to see this rise up and for an upswelling in confidence to happen as the reasons to be confident actually start to emerge in the world. And when you put those things together, that's how you can understand that it is possible to achieve movements into all-time high zone, which I described earlier as being that they won't happen until markets are confident, and that markets won't be confident until they happen is through mechanisms like pushing these stock prices up, showing a display in confidence in the soft middle of the market. And I spoke about this before as well with the broad picture. So while I am interested in things like in Nvidia and so on, I am very interested in this as a huge player in the market, determines the direction of the market an awful lot. And I am interested in things like Apple. I'm also looking to stocks which have got a little bit more exposure to that sense of the overall feeling in the market, and to see how they progress over the course of this period of uncertainty, to provide that backdrop where you see the market become confident and deserve that confidence simultaneously, because the world is a summation of all probabilities and doesn't work on any given definitive certainty, and that's where we are with the markets right now, and that's how you get there. You also don't drop in a world of complete certainty down the way either. So that's how you understand that dynamic that I was trying to explain before. I really do appreciate people tuning into the show, folks, and I turn up every week here because I want to be there with you, and to grow and to experience life, and to enjoy this wonderful arena that we have of financial markets and trading, and I really appreciate everybody who tunes in and takes part and shares my passion with me. Really, really love that. Not been feeling very well of late, but I'm fine, so don't be concerned. It's just I've just there's bugs going around and stuff, and I seem to pick them up far too easily. So I'm not particularly well, but I am here enjoying the show with you all, and I really hope that you're having a good time as well, everybody. And I see the nice comments in the live chat as well, so I really do appreciate that stuff as it's coming up on screen, because I've got your live chat right there. I can see it as whenever I look over that way. Well, so much so that it's now time as well to ask people what they would like to look at, and to check and see if I've missed any of the donations and requests that have come in. And I do see that one came in from Sauce Food Cart, who's asking about BB. It's been a wee while since we've had BB on the show. For folks, of course, who do not know, this is BlackBerry Limited, the company that brought you BBM Messenger. And that wee ball in the middle of a phone for navigating, that wee ball thing. Which all the 20-year-olds watching along are like, what are you talking about? But all the sort of 40-year-olds watching along are like, that ball, by the way, that was something. And then 3 months later, it'd have like got grease and dirt in it. It would stop working. But it was great while it lasted. So this is BlackBerry. It's been a wee while since we talked about that. That was a significant area back up there towards $8. I remember that in the big picture on this one, if we go to like the monthly chart, there's a clear divide on this stock. I've got this white line here, which I must have been using to demonstrate that in the past when I had dark mode on my chart. So I'll just make it red like that before. Yeah, there's a kind of a big sort of divide in this chart where it's positive versus negative, right? So and you can see that if you want to be tackling up towards targets like 148, and bear in mind, folks, it's not like there are. It's not impossible. Like, you might look at BlackBerry and think, oh, but BlackBerry is just a crap company, it can't do that. And then you look at a chart like this, and this is PayPal, and you see that it's not that dissimilar, right, in terms of the huge drop down, where it's made it to, and so on. And you think, well, PayPal probably can do it, right? And it's all stocks can do these things, you know. And it is a real company. Anyway, the recent price action has been very, 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 very positive. And one way to talk about this, Sauce, as you'll have seen me talking about in the past, and others will who are watching along now, would have been from the high to the low when I talked about the departure point earlier. And that's the same language I used earlier on the show, and it's what I'm using now. Measuring from the high at this price point, before the drop down to the low here, doesn't line up perfectly. You would have been thinking about how potential for a retrace typically is what I would have looked to in sort of the playbook, and I probably would have taken profit on this around about $5, right, where the 886 lasts, and it's a nice sort of round, it is, and it's a nice sort of round area. The fact that the prices are breaking above this prior high, or potentially there's still time left on today and Wednesdays can be highs in the markets as well. This could be very positive. If I was looking to buy into this company, would I do it right now? Probably not. I do anticipate that there'll be some sort of retrace back down. In fact, because of the way that this has moved up so fast in that direction, it's actually extremely likely that the prices come back down to test this area. It's actually, as well, given that this is a downward trend, remains extremely likely that prices go down to below $2. At some point there must be a flash up there at 10:13, but we can talk about that some other time, or maybe it already happened in some of these. I don't know. So while this is a downward trend, I would caution against people from assuming that it can't go down to test this area, because it would do two things at once. It would clear out the liquidity that exists with people who've got stop losses at this area, who have bought into the rise up recently, into this rise up, but think to themselves, if prices drop down below this low, then I'll cut out, which is the way that a lot of people work in the market, so much so that it becomes an actual measurable thing. And also, secondly, it'd be kind of bouncing off of this trend line, which could be drawn in a number of better ways, but you get the point there. So that's a big deal, and thanks very much to everybody for taking part in this goal. Did we actually achieve it? Wow, it says goal achieved, 10 out of 10. Blessings everybody, blessings. Yes, fantastic. We'll revisit this blessings right in just a minute. Thanks, Luke, for alerting me there. I could hear the bleeps, but yeah. Okay, cool. So anyway, as you can tell, sorry for being a bit monotonous there, right? It's my throat. This would be two things. Okay, so I would be concerned about that. That's not to say that I'm bearish. It's been very, very positive. It's just that if I was already in a position here, I would be looking with a degree of skepticism on any bullishness which didn't actually keep running up Thursday, Friday, into Monday, and so on. After having such a powerful movement like that, we've just arrived at the high, and this is a place where people will be selling off. On a stock that's got a lot of kind of meme following, if you like, then you can be exposed to sort of post-market moves where your options trades can't close, but you've got people pushing the market against you. So I would be somewhat skeptical at a high where there's a prior high on a stock like this, when the functioning markets work in a particular way, because it's the way that markets work, and I'm telling you in advance. And then afterwards, what you would see is people on the internet being like, oh my god, the markets are rigged, and you're just like, how could they be? I just said it in advance. So I'd be somewhat skeptical of this high. It's not to say that I'm advising anybody to do any particular thing with their money or whatever, or there's things, not telling anybody to buy it or sell it or anything. I just wanted to point that out, given the nature of this thing and how this stock stock is like this. However, it is extremely positive that prices are above that prior high. Extremely positive, very good. So if they can then push on up higher, the next obvious target to look to would be kind of around a bit by the 618 perhaps, or this big red line. There's $7 as a round number, but you could be looking up towards $10, and we could see a return perhaps to the Rocky Outcrop flash that exists in there around about $10, and that would be the target to look to, which still wouldn't necessarily change the downward trend that exists on this stock. Still wouldn't necessarily change it. To those who are kind of feel that my negativity there is somewhat overwhelming, I would kind of pose the question overall that when you had a stock which was down here at those lows in 1999, down here in those lows in 2003, which is around about 156, and it's then moved up to highs at $150, having gone up 100x in price, and then it spent the next from 2008, you know, from the end of the financial crisis, funnily enough, all the way down to 2024. It was in this huge downward trend for what's that, 16 years, and it made it all the way down to $2. The idea of it going back down to test these two lows where it started at to clear out the liquidity from anybody that's in there still remains very, very strong. So I would say that that's the chat there. It's very comprehensive, and it's the sort of thing that I think is very, very, very useful for people, like very, very, very useful for people who are investors or traders. 15-minute time frame for those curious. You know, we have had a pullback here. It's moved up towards the top. Perfect short area for closing out for the end of the day. It would be an ideal time. I'm not giving anybody financial advice to actually short that right there, right now, and then to look for a movement back down, perhaps even as low as $4.20 by Friday would be one way of doing that. But you'd have to be very aware of the fact that if you were using something like options, that the markets would close, and that is above that prior high, so it creates a real extreme risk for anybody trading based on that alone, if they're trying to use outside of market moves. So you can't manage your risk, and I always advocate for managing your risk in an area like this. Then you know, whatever, but I wouldn't be buying it about I don't need to tell people exactly how to trade this thing. I suspect Sauce didn't want it to have sort of today's trade on the go. The risk of it continuing up loads afterwards if you're just a hodler of the stock. The risk of it trading up lows afterwards if you're just a hodler of this stock because it trades overnight is too high to give somebody who's got a more investing mentality day trading techniques in an arena where you may be unable to manage your risk after another hour and a half goes by. To the rising tide and slaying of dooms, says Gartham. Yeah, great. Let's just read out a couple of these comments. Rocky Rules, TA Rules, thanks so much, Alex. We had blessings for all coming in. Good evening. Dropping a $5 for Team Lisbon coming in from Aventine Archives. That's quality. And we did take a look at BB. It was a lot slower, longer look actually. You asked for a quick one. I'm sorry if it went on for so long. To the rising tide and slaying of dooms came in just there now from Gartham, and that was past the point of our goal. So I just wanted to give everybody your blessings. Look, people, I really truly do believe in you as traders, right? The quality of the information here, the mentality that exists, I can see it's in the community, it's everywhere, right? And you're a part of that. You're a part of that community, and I believe in everybody in there being able to achieve the goals of their trading this week, next month, this year. 2025 I think will be a great year for everybody tuning in. And if you're watching this right now, I can guarantee that you'll have surprisingly good green trades this year, and I want to send you my blessings, folks. So there you have them. Take them, run with them, put them in the bank, store them up, save them for a rainy day, whatever pleases you. Blessings to you. Cool. Okay, sweet. Right, so where we are in the show right now is roughly, let me see, 45 minutes into the show. It's about 20 to 8 my time. I'll be wrapping up the show within the next sort of 10 minutes. If you're watching now and it's buffering, just go back 30 seconds. Everything seems to be fine. People have said it's fine. If you go back a few minutes, you'll get a healthy buffer. Everything goes fine. Thanks so much for people who are persevering. It really does help. I appreciate you tuning in today. I think the information in today's show has been quite good. I should have maybe hit the record button when you told me it wasn't working earlier. That would have been wise. Oh, maybe I am recording even. Well, if I check that later on and I've got a recording of this, I could replace my show with a recording, and it'd be all smooth. You'd have all of the sentences. Is there any crypto or anything that stands out for me right now that I would like to kind of bring particular attention to? Not necessarily. I'm going to just open up then just to see, for my own purposes, but also to see for everybody else, that volatility on the Trump token. So we spoke about this with regards to DOT. There you are looking at quarter to 2 earlier on, so about a quarter to 9 if you're in New York, and the prices then dropped all the way down from up there at 15.55 down to 14.45, then back up again to 15.45, all during today. And that's the Trump token, particularly it's the official Trump one, the one that Trump was doing there. That's that one, isn't it? So big stuff happening over there. As it's exposed to this crypto is definitely sensitive to inflation data, other economic data. Absolutely is. Interesting Melania chart. It looks like it's had 1,000 years of history on this, whereas this is just the 15-minute chart. So like you get screwed if you invested in this one up until now. Sorry to folks that did. What other ones do I want to watch? I want to take a look at. I need the suggestions to come in from the audience for the other ones to take a look at that particularly demand attention. Let's have a quick look at Tesla, shall we? See how it's getting on. It's a bit of a recovery following a drop. I don't know. Wonder, by the way, folks, I'd like to have your opinion. If you want to leave a comment that's got like you don't know what to say, but you wanted to say something other than Rocky Rocks in the comments down below. And if you're watching this right now, write that in a comment once the show finishes. But if you want to say something more, let me know what you think about my black color, my black candles. Do you like the way that my candles are black when I'm zoomed out, like an old school traditional chart? And then you zoom on in and you look at the detail, and suddenly you can see that there's green and red colors in there. I wonder if people like that. Let me know. I like it. I do for now, anyhow. Tesla is struggling a wee bit. Does it recover out of this, or does it need to go in and fulfill the destiny of that flash at $318.99? Yeah, probably. So without some sort of like positive kind of catalyst or some really interested investor who like propels this through one of these danger areas, it's actually quite likely that this continues to bleed away here. Movements tomorrow are quite important. I think that that's the feeling of the week, right? So something that I've been kind of getting towards saying throughout today's episode is like that, you often see the kind of the sort of peaks on Wednesdays and stuff like that. You often see that type of thing, but the question really is about the overall certainty, confidence, and feeling and disposition, sentiment in the market right now. And I kind of get the feeling that people are waiting kind of for tomorrow to see how to feel about today along the way with each passing day. At the minute, currently in markets, that might just be me. That might be meaningless to people or whatever, but I think that that's kind of how I feel. So it's like tomorrow is very important, right? In order to see how people feel about today, and that's expressed here on this Tesla chart, I think quite well with regards to this positive movement up. And it was also expressed very well in that BBBY chart. Let's take a quick look at GameStop, since people I know are very interested in this one. 25.97, not great as well. Not great as well on this. Like, there is the positive fundamental news for GameStop that the economy is getting worse, so that interest rates won't drop as quickly, and GameStop relies on interest rates as a mechanism for not losing money as it stands. It's it's necessary for GameStop, or else it would have a negative balance sheet. So it's like the fact over here that it was like breaking even as a company is because it has those revenues from bonds, and that's not me saying some conspiracy or anything. That's just how that is. And the interest rates are staying higher for longer. So while it might be bad news for you and your mortgage and whatever else, it's all right news for GameStop. I just thought that was an interesting little trend line there, the way that it was resistance and then became support. Overall, obviously, this is a downward trend, and the feeling really needs to be about moving outside of this, and that comes down to tomorrow again. Today's highs at $26.40 and lows at $25.60. leave us within a range, following on from just the previous drop downs and stuff. Still ranging. We need to see prices up above like $28. Start to feel like, hey, we've got out of this downward pattern. So we're still just not there yet. These types of shallow recoveries, following from what should be a buy the dip moment, which don't get follow through, create bearishness in markets. Oh, there was one. That's crucial. Was this where I wanted to show people? Probably not this one. Might have been this one. No, it wasn't. It's more like some meme coins or some. What chart was I looking at? Not. It doesn't. You can forget it. There was something I was wanting to show people, which is kind of similar to, and it does exist, right? It does exist. There's something I wanted to show people, which is quite similar to this, in terms of the huge drop down and the. No, sorry, that's the. Let me just. Yeah, in terms of this huge drop down and the lack of support along this line, and it's not to do with fractals or anything like that. It's just because it's reminiscent, right? And it's to do with crypto, in the sense that if you'd been looking at this thinking that there could be a recovery here, that was fine, and a lot of market thought that way, but actually it crashed down. In fact, that's the wrong bit. It did it again. I did it again. Sorry, this was what I wanted to show people. It was the wrong year. It often happens in crypto, is kind of part of the point. That wasn't what I was going to say. Anyway, there's this here. You were looking to see if it could get a bounce, maybe recover. This is back in 2018. The reason I got it wrong is because I thought it was 2020 in my head. Back in 2017, 2018, this downward movement happened for ages, and then the huge drop down that followed after not recovering, which created a hysteric bearishness, then eventually did recover after that drop down that happened there. And I just thought, this is probably not being spoken about by other people in the world right now, but there is something reminiscent about that with regards to this chart, and not so much to say that it's exactly the same, because it's absolutely not, but the feeling exists, right? Because in at this time here, you were thinking you could have got a recovery, but then it failed, and it's like, but what was happening while it failed? Like, what was happening? Well, Trump had been elected on a mandate from, at least with cryptocurrency voters, that he would be positive for crypto and so on, and then he launched his own meme coin and everything else. But the highs came in November, just following the election. Like, yeah, okay, positivity came back down and it bounced off lows, and the lows match up with like the lows in September and August. So you're thinking, as you see on other cryptocurrencies, that the lows that we got recently were like the lows that we got in August, and then in this one we got in November, and then with the drop down we got it again there now. You might be thinking, oh right, so this is maybe a good area for a bounce and so on, and totally fair play, why not? But then what actually happened is it dropped down a hell of a lot more, like another sort of 50% plus further drop from the point when you could have reasonably expected kind of a move up. It's just something that'll be reminiscent to crypto investors from 2017, and it's kind of just like speaks to the overall mentality in the markets right now, with that lack of confidence. And it does come to a tipping point time where eventually, the markets will become confident again, or things get worse, right? Because that's how things go. So with this I'll be looking to see if things can, actually start to recover. And then if we get like, a movement that even if it comes back down again and so on, it might be really, really positive for the markets to have had this bleeding off effect, to vent off all of the that's me pushing vent buttons, I know, to vent off all of the extra steam before it then rises into all-time high territory. So if Trump wanted to have kind of, the markets want the Trump presidency to be hallmarked by sustained positivity in the crypto markets, it could be the case that movements up above $110,000 were unacceptable in the markets in the immediate weeks following the election of Donald Trump, given that there would be corrections along the way. So it's healthier to have the corrections out of the way early, and then while people are still fresh in the kind of mode of like, he's our president, so within the first 100 days and sort of before the sort of State of the Union speech and all that, maybe we see it moving up towards 120, and this was a necessary kind of venting off of any additional pressure, and it shakes out various participants. Like, all the Democrats can sell and the Republicans can, like, yes, let's go, let's take the money for ourselves, right? Maybe that's what's happening. Let's hope so. All is well, says Brandon Miller. Thanks for everything you do, and thank you so much for your donation, pal, as well. To the Rising Tide, said Gartham. I've read that out so many times. Thanks for writing the comment in the chat box saying Rocky rocks and all that. Do you want to take a wee look at LPSN? I did earlier on, look, but I'll do it again. Absolutely. So I'm still quite positive about LPSN. Trading it within this range is it's doable and so on. But the detail on this one for me exists kind of outside of the range. I would really like to see this one stay above $1.20 though, which is a decent area for kind of managing risk, so to speak. Because the potential on this one of it going back down to $1 if it breaks above there. So the potential of it moving down towards this area is quite high when you consider, how this has been going recently. So is there a catalyst outside of the charts which could move this in either direction that's coming up soon? And there is, because there's earnings coming up, and it's curious to me about how well priced in the earnings were last time round, when they gave a really kind of expectations management approach to their forward guidance, when it pushed the prices down towards this trend line, and it priced in a lot of that crap from before. It priced it right into the stock, pushed up, and it overpriced in, and we can see the recovery then in the in-between times has been to bring us back up to above the prices we were before the last earnings came out. Now, if you then put this into the context, remember from the last show I talked about this being resistance, right? And then how this has become support, right? This particular price line here, and this area of resistance, right? If you look down at the bottom of the screen, what do you notice? Well, that's where the earnings were. Where we were coming into the earnings, right? So we were coming into the earnings here. This is time-wise, and that's why I'm pointing at the bottom axis, sorry. So they're coming into the earnings there, and we were experiencing resistance at that time coming into them. And then the board said, our earnings are going to be kind of worse for a while, and the stock price plummeted. And this then overly priced in that negative outlook for this period of time. Then subsequent to that, the price recovered above the resistance it was trying to get above before the last earnings. So the market was more positive about it in December than it had been in October, before the prior earnings had gone more positive than before the negative news. And I apologize to all and this includes yourself, Luke, and everybody that's watching, my erudite audience. I apologize to you for repeating myself too much. I want to make sure it's really, really clear, but I know that so many of you are intelligent. You're like, I can really hear that. You don't need to do that so much for me, but I'm talking to like everyone, and I want it to be a super accessible show. But if the audience really, truly feels that way, let me know, and I'll just make it only for people who can understand things the first time they come out of my mouth. Because that's the way I would normally talk, and if that's what you want, that's what I'll do. But anyway, the point is that we've got above that. So earnings were priced in here, apparently, it's how you would think about it, but they were actually negative, and the negative outcome was partly influenced by the way that the board talked, pushed the prices down, sentiment dropped, came down to this trend line, partly formed this trend line, was already kind of there, partly formed it, retested it, moved back up. Then we spent a while consolidating in a time, forming and demonstrating to the market that the area that we couldn't beat before the last earnings report is now what is supporting the price this time around, which is inherent, which is me being quite explicit. That's very bullish. If you go back 30 seconds or so, you should be able to watch it without any problems. Then this was operated as support, and now we see the prices could move up if they had a catalyst that was positive, or indeed perhaps even if the markets just react positively to their honesty and their and things like that. Momentum investing is essentially an exception to the idea of buying low and selling high. Investors following this style investing are usually not interested in betting on cheap stocks and waiting for them to recover. Instead, they believe that buying high and selling higher is the way to make far more money in lesser time. But, right, it's like they've watched my show when they wrote this article and they're like, oh yeah, this must be what that group of investors are doing. When I know fine that people in their diamond hand in this thing buying it low to sell higher as opposed to buying high and selling higher. And we also don't need to be super genius to know that that's the case, because this is what the stock actually looks like. So it's a funny one, that, right? It's a funny one. I don't know if AI was influenced by the content that like Jamie and I put out and what exists in the world from how we talk about things, has then convinced this thing that there's like a real trading element going on with it, where they've got that mentality, when we know ourselves that it's like loads of diamond handers in here who aren't selling this until it goes up to like $69, which is obviously not what the article is about. It certainly isn't buying high, selling higher, but that's probably, it will become a case of buying high, selling higher if the markets really do run with this thing. Then of course we'll be buying high and selling higher. That's the logarithmic chart, by the way, folks. Here it is on linear, just so you can get like, you know, the normie. This is how normies look at it. That's what that chart looks like. How can you say, oh yeah, no, they're buying high, but look at these guys buying high right now, guys. Okay. You know, that's why you should just tune in here for your live person news, and of course the trades button and the Discord. Thank you so much to everybody who's been able to suffer with the stream. It should be good, right? It should be good. Sauce, you missed the blessings. Oh, the blessings. Did the blessings not happen? I put the blessings out, folks. Anyway, right. I hope that you can hear me now. I'm going to sign off shortly. Please hit the like button. I do this all the time for you guys because I love you so much and I believe in you, to create a rising tide and better traders around me. So how can you pay me back in that sense? Well, come be around me. Join the Discord. Be a good trader in and around my atmosphere so that I can have all of your goodness reflected back on me. I can reflect all my goodness on you. It'll be such a great exchange and we'll all make loads of money. How about that, right? That's why I want to educate and coach people and everything. Great. I will talk to you again next week. Please do tune in for that. And if I need to, I'll upload this as a video that you can see separately later. I hope you can see this right now. It's been a pleasure. Blessings to everybody. Hope your trades go very well. I did that earlier. If you didn't see it, I'll put it out again as a clip. And let's go Glasgow Celtic. Let's beat the Bayern Munich and let's go. Let's win the Champions League. All right. Support Celtic tonight, everybody. Much love. See you.